Long before the world had cities, governments, or written language, humans lived in a land of raw survival. Every day was a test, finding food, securing shelter, avoiding predators. Life was fragile, uncertain, and fleeting. Yet in the midst of this struggle, there was one truth they could not escape: death. In the forests, plains, and caves, humans observed life closely. They watched the deer fall to a hunter's spear, a small child taken by illness, or a companion crushed by a rock slide. Death was everywhere, sudden and merciless. It did not discriminate. And even without words, humans began to notice patterns. Animals rotted, plants decayed, humans aged, and one day everyone would vanish. It was terrifying, but also fascinating. Early humans did not have science or religion to explain what happened after death. They only had observation, experience, and imagination. They began to treat death not as an abstract idea, but as a tangible reality that demanded attention. Over time, they learned to care for the dead. When a tribe member passed away, others would gently lay the body to rest in the earth, sometimes covering it with stones, soil, or leaves. They did not act randomly. There was thought behind every gesture. Burial was not simply practical. It was a way to honor life, to show respect for someone who had shared the hardships of survival. Sometimes objects accompanied the dead: a spear for hunting, a piece of clothing, or a necklace made of shells and bones. Perhaps these offerings were meant to provide comfort or guidance in the world beyond, a silent acknowledgement that life extended beyond the eyes of the living. In these actions, we see the earliest human attempts at spirituality, a desire to understand what lay beyond the final breath. Caves became silent storytellers of this curiosity. On rough walls, humans painted figures of animals, humans, and symbols we do not fully understand. These were not mere decorations. They were expressions of thought, communication with unseen forces, or perhaps prayers for safety, guidance, and remembrance. Each painting, each symbol carried meaning. They were humanity's first attempts to bridge life and death, to give shape to the invisible. Death was feared, but it was also respected. It shaped communities. Losing a member was not just emotional, it could endanger survival. Each death reminded the living that life was precious and fragile. Rituals around the dead were not only acts of mourning, they were lessons in cooperation, empathy, and shared responsibility. Caring for those who had passed strengthened the bonds of those who remained. In some ancient graves, archaeologists have discovered flowers carefully placed with the deceased. Neanderthals, for instance, left blossoms in their tombs. It is a gesture of love, of remembrance, of hope. Early humans may not have understood what came after death, but they understood the value of memory and the importance of honoring the dead. These practices tell us something profound. Even in a world without writing, without laws, humans sought meaning. They could not stop death, but they could face it with dignity. They could mourn, they could remember, they could act. From fear and helplessness emerged empathy and wisdom. Some burials reveal a more complex understanding. Cro-Magnons often included jewelry, tools, and even animal bones alongside their loved ones. These were not simple rituals. They suggest beliefs in a journey beyond life, a recognition that death was part of a larger cycle. The world may have been harsh, but humans were beginning to imagine a realm beyond the physical, a spiritual space where life continued in some form. Even everyday actions were touched by this awareness. People avoided eating near graves, treated the dead carefully, and sometimes even spoke softly in the presence of corpses. Respect for death became intertwined with respect for life.
Survival demanded it, but empathy and reflection also guided it. Time passed. Generation after generation, humans refined these practices. Symbols became more intricate, rituals more defined, and spiritual thinking more sophisticated. Burial grounds became sacred spaces, places of memory, learning, and reflection. Humans began to see themselves as part of a cycle of life, bound to the land, their ancestors, and the generations to come. What is remarkable is that these lessons, learned tens of thousands of years ago, still echo in our modern world. Every ceremony, every memorial, every gesture of remembrance carries the imprint of those first humans. Their reverence they showed for death shaped the foundation of human culture, morality, and community. Even in fear they found meaning. Even in helplessness they found ways to honor life. Death, once a shadow of terror, became a teacher, a guide for how to live, how to care, and how to remember. And so, from the forests, plains, and caves of prehistoric times, a story emerges, a story not only of survival, but of reflection, empathy, and awareness. Our ancestors looked at death and saw not just an end, but a force that shaped their communities, their rituals, and ultimately their humanity. When we bury our loved ones today, light candles in their memory, or whisper prayers for the departed, we continue a tradition that stretches back tens of thousands of years, a tradition that began with people who faced the unknown, stared into the void, and decided to act with respect, care, and understanding. Death may still be a mystery, but humanity has always met it with courage, thought, and remembrance. In the shadow of mortality, prehistoric humans taught us something timeless, that life is precious, memory is sacred, and the bonds we share define the meaning of our existence. Even as centuries passed and civilizations rose and fell, the lessons of the first humans endured. Their rituals, their burials, their art, and their silent contemplation of death laid the foundation for everything that followed: faith, philosophy, and the universal human desire to find meaning in the face of the unknown. And in this, we are still their descendants, not just in body, but in thought, in ritual, and in the way we honor life and death. Their story is not lost. It lives in us, in every act of remembrance, in every gesture of care, and in every attempt to understand what comes after the final breath.